So Glynn is actually an aquatic biologist by trade, but currently works for the City of Marion, where his main role is to capture, treat, and reuse stormwater for irrigating the public realm and sports ovals, sort of. He's actively always working on this project. His favorite part of the job is using the wetlands as a research platform for local primary, high school, and university students. So Glynn will discuss some of the key outcomes from the project that Robin just described, and also how it works into the aquifer storage and recovery. Take it away, Glynn.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Robin. So I think there are many reasons why council, state and federal government came together to build schemes like Oaklands wetlands. These headlines rather, probably quite familiar to you guys, probably around 2010, 2009. These sort of strap lines all across the press. And it's reasons like that why the federal government at the time, I think the Howard government, put $14 billion on the table to fund schemes like Oaklands and the desalination plant that we built here in Adelaide. The other reason was really around just the water security. I was in state government during this time. I remember a meeting where we seriously talked about bringing in bottled water to use instead of potable water. That's how scarce water was getting. So at 2008, 2009, our water was actually in deficit. And this graph really, at the time, was banded around. And this graph really what drove us to build a desalination plant twice the size we were going to build it. The Lonsdale plant was really built or sized for 50 gigalitres. Because of this graph and other reasons, we actually built it 100 gigalitres, which is far, far too much than we currently need today. And looking at the forecast, we didn't need that desalination plant till 2028, but we built it early, and we built it big. Also, of course, we built, I think, 10 or 11 of these ASR schemes at the same time to use our stormwater as well as water from the ocean. So going back to local level, in Marion, the drought was obviously very, very severe. We were in water restrictions, I think 2006, 2007. We turned off water to most of our parks and gardens. So it's got a small reserve, but this sort of timeline proves or demonstrates my point. In March 1998, pocket-sized reserve, understory, tree canopy quite healthy. By 2004, the reserve starting to look quite stressed. And by 2010, that's the reserve. Trees have gone, grass is dead, and that's just typical of our reserves across our city, and in fact across the city of Adelaide. So there's lots of indirect costs of the drought as well for the city of Marion. We lost, we think, around 28 hectares of irrigated turf. We assume we lost 5% of our trees, 10% of our understory, and that comes to loss of amenity, just degraded public open space, and a reduction in health and well-being, fitness activity, sense of well-being, all those indirect costs that you can't really put a dollar value on. And if you could, you'd probably build a lot more schemes like Oaklands. Direct costs of the drought were intense. Water costs have gone up, so potable water since 2006 has gone up 250%. Back in 06 we were paying $1 a kilolitre. We're now paying $3.50 a kilolitre. That irrigated turf, it's probably cost us around $3 million to replace that. Our irrigation systems were turned off for 8 years. You go and put them back on again, they don't work. So we're currently upgrading our irrigation systems. We spent $2 million in the last 2 years. Probably got another $3 million to go. Of course, we're replacing our trees as we go, our understory, and hopefully increasing that value to the community. I mentioned water costs have gone up. So the blue line represents the cost. So back in 04, 05, $1 a kilolitre, we were using 300 megs, costing us $300,000 a year. As we move through the years, our consumption's gone down and then sort of flatlined through the drought, gone back up a little bit recently until the last year or two, where Oaklands Wetlands is now on, it's commissioned, it's operating in anger, and we're reducing our mains water consumption and cost, and that's why the graph drops off. But our water bill a couple of years ago was $700,000 a year. If we were irrigating, what we were irrigating back in 04, 05, which is around 150 parks and gardens, ovals, our water bill would be over $1 million today. So we've tried to be a bit more astute about what we water and how we water it. Rob's talked about this slide, so I'll really quickly whip through it. So I pinched this from Rob. I made mine look a lot better, actually. It's much more sexier. Yeah. Don't you think?
Uber sexy.
Yeah. It's a shame that I haven't actually got any photographs of how the site looks today, because it's matured since Rob's photographs. We're probably nearly 4 years on since then. And the site, you know, all the understory that we planted along this shore. This is more of a biodiversity corridor that's now well established. Our locals have really got involved and helped us plant that. So it's a really community asset with community ownership. And the site now is really sits into its landscape quite well. Rob did mention why council tore down the roundhouse. Great question. We looked at all sorts of things to do with that roundhouse. It's an iconic building. Architecturally, it was brilliant. I loved it, actually. It was a great vantage point to sit up on the first floor of that building and overlook the wetlands. But it needed a new roof. The wiring needed doing completely. It was full of asbestos. It was a $500,000 bill just to get anybody in there. And then we put it to market. No one really wanted it. So we knocked it down because the kids were just, it was just becoming, you know, full of graffiti, and the kids have ripped it to pieces. So now what we're about to do is rebuild a rotundus type of building there. It's like a bandstand, same sort of size, big. Going to be a community facility for you know, encouraging open air events and bands and sort of just get the public more involved. We have built at the front here a recreational plaza, a BMX track, skateboard park, parkour, if you guys know what that is. Yeah. Anyone know what that is?
Yeah.
Yeah? Yeah, good. Yes, the facility's definitely matured since, obviously, since we built it. Rob's shown this side as well. I'll just go back over it really because the intent was to irrigate those 35 reserves. And therein lied the challenge because back in the day when we were trying to justify a $9 million expenditure, you obviously look at your demand and you look at your demand across the city and you add a bit on, obviously, because you want to, you know, make sure that the site gets built. It's built for all the right reasons, but the demand at the time I think was slightly overcooked because the old philosophy was we'd irrigate fence to fence. You know, now we don't do that. We now apply codes of practice and we apply alternative treatments and dry land landscaping and trees. And in essence, we're really only irrigating half the footprint we said we'd irrigate back in, you know, post-drought, which is a good thing because we've got other customers for that water, not just our own public realm. And despite the fact that's no longer mains water we're pouring on grass, you know, it's not drinking water, it's treated stormwater, you still want to use that resource you know, wisely. Oh, wrong one. So on that supply and demand sort of equation, Rob mentioned that the scheme was built to harvest 400 to 500 megalitres per year. Harvesting is not really the issue. He's right, there's plenty of water in Sturt Drain. So we can take out the river as much water as we want, really. we don't, because we're using energy when we do so. So we take out what the wetlands need to be healthy throughout the summer, and what we need to take out, treat, and then inject during the winter. So we've actually reduced what we've been harvesting over the last few years. We've increased steadily what we've injected into the aquifer. And that's because as you inject more and more water into the aquifer and you extract it in that seasonal cycle, the aquifer gets more porous, and you're able to inject more water in as you force water through that big sandy tank that we're lucky to have under our feet here in Adelaide. Because without that sandy tank, the hydrogeology is ideal here. We couldn't do schemes like this. So we were quite lucky to have that big sandy reservoir to put our water into. So this winter we put in 200 megs. We think we'll use about 110 megalitres this year. And most of that is for the public realm, our parks and gardens, but we are starting to sell that water to third parties. So we originally had 5 sites connected, and we went for low-hanging fruit. That was our really big sports ovals. And since then, the irrigation systems have been renewed, replaced, and that's that $2 million we've spent. And we've gone from 5 sites to 25 sites. And we'll probably add on a few more this coming summer as well. The system's very smart. It's very intuitive. An idiot can run it, which I think was why they employed me. So this is our smart operating system. It's all bells and whistles. It's PLCs, human machine interfaces through a SCADA type system, which is on the cloud, which I can see on my phone. So I was recently away on holiday and I got an alarm through my phone that the pump had failed, and you go on, you just log in, you reset the pump, and off it goes again. So I think that was about $150,000 in that $9 million price tag, worth every cent really, because we've definitely used the smarts to drive the system and optimize the amount of water we take and reduce our energy consumption. Also, what we've done, which we never really envisaged, we've added on smart technology onto, we now measure water quality throughout the wetlands. We sell water to the bus depot, so we obviously monitor how much water they take. We've got a truck fill functionality, so there's I'll show you in a minute, it's a truck that takes water for construction type activities. They were using drinking water to compact dust and or to suppress dust and compact soils. They're now using treated stormwater. And our groundwater borers, that's obviously a very valuable resource, groundwater. Not only did we suck the reservoirs and rivers dry during the drought, we went after groundwater, and we reduced our groundwater in Adelaide by about 6 metres. Schemes like Oaklands and the 10 or 12 schemes we've got like this, and they're replacing that groundwater loss. And we're actually starting now to create artesian conditions in the groundwater, which used to be, you know, how the groundwater used to be prior European settlement. So we're going back to our sort of historic regime. And our golf club's quite thirsty. We may connect the golf club to the scheme at some stage, but we now monitor how much water we use through the smarts. There's a more detailed sort of drill down of how Oaklands works. So there is the well where we harvest the water in the river. There's a pump in there which pumps water, which we measure the flow, we measure EC. It pumps it into the wetland, and that's representing the wetland. And then from the wetland we pump it into the aquifer. And then that's done during the winter. And in the summer we pump it out the aquifer into a balancing tank, and we pump it along that north and south corridor along the river to our irrigation demand. We measure flow. Obviously, if we're selling water, we want to know how much we've sold to who, and how much we've used internally. We measure water quality. We've done this with Flinders University. They stuck on some surface water monitoring equipment, which we connected to our SCADA, and that data is now being used by the students who can dial in live and see how the water is responding. And they're using that to really optimize how we take water from the river, and how we treat it and how we put it into the ground. 2 minutes. I've mentioned smart irrigation. We obviously use this to drive our irrigation systems, so we don't turn on irrigation systems all at once and suck out too much water from the Oaklands, which then the pumps can't cope. So we're We've got the demand side of the equation, and we've got the supply side of the equation, all controlled by smart technology. Customers, I mentioned we've got a water truck taking water out. This is really Gateway South doing the South Road upgrade. They're using a lot of water, which I said would have been expensive mains water. Our street trees, we've got our own trucks which take water from Oaklands and they water our own trees. So looking towards the future, we're currently running Oaklands in second gear. It's probably got 5 or 6 gears. We can ramp up the injection and the harvesting, and we're hoping to service the Tonsley precinct, which is being plumbed for dual reticulation, so we can go inside buildings for toilets and hot water. I think the attractive things for cooling, we're looking at district heating and district cooling, and we're using our water for that. And Flinders University, they're doing a precinct development type of plan where again they want water inside buildings and heating, cooling. So the wetlands are, as Rob mentioned, have been built to be future-proofed. We add on another pump in the harvest pit, we can suck more water out the river. We can add on more wells to put water into the ground and take water out of the ground. We can add on another balancing tank, which services the pumps, and then we add on more pumps to provide more pressure so we can pump more water further afield. So the whole thing is modular. And lastly, I think the future of these stormwater schemes in Adelaide is to combine them with our wastewater treatment plants, our sewage works. We do a lot of good work here in Adelaide where we treat sewage water and we pump it in Adelaide parks. It's going to the new hospital. It's treated to a very high standard. So you've got treatment works to the north, Glenelg, and then 2 down the south. I see these schemes being linked with our 15 or so stormwater schemes and having a sort of combined network which will enable us to deliver treated water, alternative water, as against drinking water, which is obviously very expensive. Why would you pour drinking water onto grass? Okay, I think that's me done. Thank you.